Hello, and welcome to Textile Talks. Thank you for joining us. I'm Amy Milne. I'm the Executive Director of the Quilt Alliance, and I'm so glad that you joined us today. I'm in Western North Carolina, and I'd love it if you'd like, that you would share in the chat box where you're connecting from today. And tell us a little bit about what attracted you, or what brought you to Textile Talks. Are you an artist? Are you a quilt owner? Are you a Quilts of Valor participant? Let us know. Um, but I'm really glad that you joined us today. And I would like to say that we've had such a diverse audience. It's always so interesting to see where you're from, what organization brought you to this event. After our textile talk today, there'll be a survey in your web browser. So I hope you'll fill that out and let us know what you thought. Um, and our topic today is quilt stories from the Quilts of Valor Foundation. And I'm super excited about that. Maybe you're a part of Quilts of Valor and that's what's brought you to Textile Talks. But whatever it is that brought you here, I'm glad you found this series. So, in case you're new to Textile Talks, it is a weekly program presented on Zoom on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time by the Quilt Alliance. I'm the executive director of the Quilt Alliance. I may have said that already. And our three partner organizations shown here are the International Quilt Museum, SAQA, which is Studio Art Quilt Associates, and the Surface Design Association. And all Textile Talks are recorded and available via YouTube. This recording will be available by the end of the day tomorrow, probably. And I'm going to ask my colleague from SAQA, Lucy Shaken, to enter the link for the Textile Talks recording playlist on YouTube so that you can have that. And maybe you've missed some, or maybe you're just new to the series and want to try to catch up. So, if you are unfamiliar with the Quilt Alliance, I also want to briefly tell you a little bit about our mission. Our mission is to document, preserve, and share the stories of all quilts and all quilt makers. And to find out more about the Quilt Alliance and our oral history and quilt documentation projects, which include QSOS, Go Tell It, which we're going to talk about today, and Running Stitch, a podcast, you can visit our website, quiltalliance.org. And after our talk today, I hope you will visit the website and consider becoming an individual member or a group member. That includes lots of benefits for both individuals and groups. And we really rely on this kind of support, as do all our sibling organizations, to carry out our important mission. And this year, more than ever, you may have seen my post, some of you, that the Quilt Alliance, we are based in Western North Carolina, and we did suffered some damage and losses due to hurricane damage. So this is a great time if you've thought about making a donation or joining. So please consider supporting us this giving season. And I want to say too that if you have questions, I'm going to have two folks from the Quilts of Valor Foundation join me, Lauri and Lexie. And if you have questions for them as you're watching the video, or as we start our discussion after the video plays, feel free to enter those questions in the Q&A box. And if you have comments or technical questions, maybe put those in the chat box. That way we'll see your questions if you put them in the Q&A box. We're more likely to. And if you have a comment in the chat box, make sure you look at the drop-down box then and set it to everyone, so everyone can see your comment versus just the host and the panelist. And we also have enabled Zoom's closed captions feature. So if you prefer not to view the captions, you can turn them off or on by finding the CC or show captions button or live captions button, or you can go into your settings. So the project that we're going to demonstrate today using the videos that we recorded at the Quilts of Valor conference is called Go Tell It. So I'm really excited to not only talk to Lexie and Lauri about Quilts of Valor, but also demonstrate this project. So a little over a year ago, I traveled to Paducah, Kentucky for the Quilts of Valor 20th anniversary conference. And it was a wonderful celebration. I was there to celebrate and also to document Quilts of Valor volunteers who had agreed to record short videos with us for the Go Tell It project. And Go Tell It is one of our two flagship projects. And the format is very simple, as you can see here. One quilt, one person, one camera, 3 minutes or less, another quilt story saved. So it's very simple. It can be a person can talk about a quilt they made, or they can talk about a quilt they own. And what they say about that quilt is completely up to them. There are no questions or interview prompts. It's just what they want to say about the quilt. It's sort of like a show and tell that you might have at a guild or a community event. So anyone can submit a Go Tell It and record it. There's a guidelines. Lucy, if you can find that Go Tell It guidelines link, maybe put that in the chat. It tells you how to record these simple videos using just your phone, very simple equipment, and how to upload it. So it's a great project for a group, an individual, a family, a group of friends. It's very versatile, and I hope you'll look it up. So what I'm going to show you next is a compilation of 11 videos that I recorded at the conference, and you will just be so interested to see the variety here. If you had a preconceived idea of what a Quilts of Valor might look like, I think you might be really surprised and interested to see how much diversity is in these quilts, and how prolific some of these quilters are. One person has got 3 videos in this set, 3 different quilts. So you can do as many Go Tell It's as you want. So let's get to the video. And after the video, let me mention I am going to have Lexie Millikan, the executive director of the Quilts of Valor Foundation, and Lauri Leirdahl, who is the board president. So we're going to talk to them after the video. So if you have questions, but we also want to find out what is important, what about documenting quilts is important to the Quilts of Valor. So I look forward to that discussion. Let's watch the video.
My name is Lauri Thompson, and I'm telling my quilt story at the Quilts of Valor 20th Anniversary Conference in Paducah, Kentucky. Today is September 14, 2023, and it's particularly special for me because I'm serving as the executive director currently for the organization, and it's been a privilege to meet quilters across the U.S. and wrap our service members and veterans. I'm excited to tell my quilting story. I came into quilting later. I was a garment sewer for years, 4-H kid who learned how to sew, studied clothing and textiles in college, and then went a different direction. And then got into quilting 7 years ago when my friend got a long arm. So I have to credit the long arm for getting me into quilting. Once my friend had the long arm and quilting felt easier, I was hooked. I just didn't want to do quilts on a domestic machine. That was a little intimidating. So I quilted happily with her help for 4 years, and then she moved out of state, and then it was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So I was also at a crossroads at that time in my life where I had taken a break from my nonprofit career and was pursuing craft classes and things like that to teach and build into a business, and then the pandemic hit. So in September 2020, I had a decision to make around that time. Was I going back to work for a nonprofit, or was I buying a long arm? And my husband says, buy the long arm first, and the rest has been history. It's opened up a completely new world for me. One of my quilting friends asked me, she said, everybody bought a Peloton, and you bought a long arm. And I said, yeah. She goes, you got the better deal. And so here I am 3 years later on that journey, which led me to my role with Quilts of Valor. I had a nonprofit background in quilting, and just randomly found the posting 2 years ago and applied, and here we are. And it's just been a great journey all the way around with Quilts of Valor and with long arming, and it's just opened up a whole new community for me. My long arm that I have an Innova M24 with the autopilot, so I say I'm a digital quilter. I don't do any free motion, anything like that. But for me, it's really fun to get the computer going, get the machine going, and connect with other quilters and help them finish their quilts, and also quilt some Quilts of Valor. My long arm is named Roxy. I'm in the Denver area, so Roxy has altitude and attitude, and she's a tough cookie. But it's been great to just make my own quilts and work with others to have their quilts come to life. So the quilt that I'm going to share is a Quilt of Valor that I made for my uncle, Colonel Noel Keller. He served in the Marine Corps, lifelong career, and it was a privilege to present that to him in April of 22. And yeah, it was fun. I got to piece it from the beginning and used a great pattern from one of our members, long-armed it, and it was just amazing to present it to him. And of course put a Quilt of Valor label on it and went through the ceremony in California.
Go for it. My name is Kathy Vick, and I am from Tennessee, and I am going to tell you the story at this year's Quilt of Valor 20th anniversary celebration in Paducah, Kentucky. Today is Thursday, September the 14th, and I wanted to share my story about a COVID quilt that was made by a bunch of young people. During the COVID, I went into the Eagle River Boys and Girls Club and taught young people from the ages of 7 to 9 how to sew for the very first time. And we put together a Quilt of Valor. The quilt was done with lots of love and lots of problems and lots of steps, but the children learned how to sew. And when we tried to find a veteran to award it to, one of the young men's dad had just returned home from Iraq. And when the media, local media in Anchorage called and wanted a report, said, hey, could we award a quilt? Or like, it's COVID. And we said, we'll go to your house. So we called up the veteran's family and said, can we come award this quilt? When we got there, his family, his next generation family, all his brothers and sisters and everybody were there, and it was an honor for them. The young man was 9 years old at the time, and when the media asked him, how did it feel to make this quilt and sign the quilt and give it to your father? And the young man started crying. He said, I just wanted my dad home. And everybody got quiet. And when we started talking to the family had over 120 years of service to this country. One of the most touching moments was just seeing young people learning how to give back through a time of COVID, and then also a time when their fathers were deployed. And that's my experience.
Ready. Hi, my name is Denise Salyers. I'm telling my quilt story at the Quilts of Valor 20th Anniversary Conference in Paducah, Kentucky. Today is Friday, September 15th. I'm from Arizona, and this is a quilt that was designed and created by my 4-H group who have kids ages 8 to 14 that sewed on this quilt and entered it in the county fair. And you'll notice that they did get a ribbon, a blue ribbon on this, and we are going to present this quilt at our November 4-H meeting, community club meeting, to a veteran and award the quilt. So this is a story of, we've been doing this for now 9 years, and we have probably awarded close to 15 quilts. So it's my mission every year to have all of the kids work on the quilts, and they also do the quilting of it using my computerized quilt machine. So they do it from start to finish. At the November meeting of every year, we award the Quilts of Valor through a ceremony at our 4-H meeting, community club meeting. And the kids do the presentation. They say all the parts and read off the information about the veteran, and usually the veteran is a family member or a close friend. It's a way of recognizing their services and sacrifices for the benefit of America. So it really creates communication when it happens, because the kids have to do an essay or a study on what it is they actually did while the veteran was in the service. So it's really informative, and it's really well received in our community.
You are.
My name is Denise Salyers, and I'm telling my quilt story at the Quilts of Valor 20th Anniversary Conference in Paducah, Kentucky. Today is Friday, September 15th. Today I'd like to show you a quilt that was made by kids of military sponsors. This was made this summer in 2023 at a 4-H camp site that was hosting a camp for kids of the military. And the kids put this quilt together, so I'm really proud of them. It meant a lot to them. They understood why we were making it, and we're really touched and made sure that they did a good job. And I just wanted to thank them for participating, and we'll be awarding this Quilt of Valor sometime in the near future. Thank you. My name is Denise Salyers, and I'm telling my quilt story at the Quilts of Valor 20th Anniversary Conference in Paducah, Kentucky. Today is Friday, September 15th. This quilt was made using the Quilt of Valor Blocks of the Year pattern for 2023. And I assembled the block kits and took them to the county fair and set up 4 sewing machines, where then we invited people that were attending the fair to sit down and sew on some of these blocks. So we had a lot of kids, a lot of 4-H kids, parents, grandparents, men, women, all ages, sit down and sit and sew for an hour or so and create these blocks. We then got to the point during the 4-day fair that we had enough blocks created to form the quilt. So some 4-H kids put the blocks together in rows and assembled the quilt top. I quilted the quilt top. It is yet to be bound, but we plan on presenting this quilt to a veteran for the Quilts of Valor during the county fair 2024, which will be in March of 2024 in Phoenix, Arizona. So I just wanted to say I was really proud of all of the people that stopped by. We had lots and lots of interest in the quilt and in the sewing. So thank you.
Hello, my name's Rhoda Johnson, and I'm telling my quilt story at the Quilts of Valor 20th Anniversary Convention in Paducah, Kentucky. I'm from Huntsville, Alabama, and this is my koala quilt. I made this in, I believe it was April of 2020. It was kind of a COVID thing when I got home, but they also had those wildfires in Australia, and all the koalas had gotten hurt. And I saw this Elizabeth Hartman pattern. I was like, I gotta do it. So I did, and you notice all the koalas are Tula pink fabric. They're not traditional gray pandas, and it's just fun. And I was going to donate it to the people in Australia. My brother lives out there in Australia, and I got enough quilts, so I decided to keep it. And I put Minky on the back, and so it goes with me anytime I go anywhere out of town. I take it, put it on my bed, so I have the extra weight and the warmth. And, I just love it. And a little side note, I was cutting this out. It's like 1,000,000 pieces. I was cutting it out. And I bet nobody knows anybody that's ever broken their toe using a ruler. But yes, it can be done. When you drop it from your cutting table with the pointy end down, and it hits right between the joints. Broke it, screamed, cussed, 2 in the morning. I was like, I'm done. But this is my quilt.
My name is Don Dixon. I'm telling my quilt story at the Quilts of Valor 20th Anniversary Conference in Paducah, Kentucky. Today is Friday, September 15th. I made my first quilt about 16 years ago when my son and his wife were pregnant with twins. My sister got me into this, and I've been making quilts ever since. About 14 years ago, I became involved with Quilts of Valor and made several quilts. And then a few years ago, I came across these Defenders of Freedom panels at Goodwill. I thought, oh, I like those. So I made a quilt using that fabric and found out that, well, I can make a quilt of valor that is not red, white, and blue. And it was very popular. Then a few years later, the panels became available. They brought them back into print. And I was able to buy some more. I made a collection of about 6 of these quilts and have awarded 5 of them. And recently I've awarded one to Arlen and one to Tim down in Fort Hood, Texas, who was an amputee. And then recently one for Joe. All of the veterans that are awarded this quilt are airborne, 101st Airborne. And I think it's really unique to be able to have a very specific quilt for a veteran. Joe suffers from chronic PTSD and did not want the quilt, but his best friend Jim insisted on nominating him and insisted that I present him the quilt. However, he was really reluctant, and so I had Jim present Joe with this Quilt of Valor. And then when he had finished the presentation on his own, he said he wanted to call me, and all he said to me was, "Thank you." And Jim sent me a picture of Joe covered up with the quilt, and that told the whole story. It really meant a lot to him, far more than he had ever anticipated. And that's my story. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Robin Harris, and I'm telling my quilt story at the Quilts of Valor 20th Anniversary Conference in Paducah, Kentucky. Today is Thursday, September 24th in 2023. My 3 minutes is going to have 4 parts. First part's the intro, then the second part is the process of how this quilt happened, and then the third part is what's my takeaway. So first of all, I'm a 5th generation fiber artist, and they probably go back further, but we've been quilting in our family for many generations. I started quilting in 1980s. That's before rotary cutters, before special rulers, but now I like it much better now. And my favorite piecing machine is a Singer 1950-201-2, which was my mother's sewing machine, which passed on to me. My favorite quilting machine, I'm a sitting quilter, is a Bernina Q20, which I need a whole lot more practice with, but I love it. My favorite thing about quilting is getting new tools and processes, and I do that by taking classes, and then by teaching classes, and then I take my money I earn from teaching classes and buy new tools. So, to me, quilting's a process and a puzzle, and when you're all finished, you learn things and you have things to share. And what I love now that I'm older is that I'm able to quilt because I love it, not out of necessity, which I have made my living with my sewing in the past times. So let me have you look at and enjoy my designed anniversary quilt. And the process of how this started is it started with an idea and a dream, and we're having our 20th year anniversary of the Quilts of Valor, and I said, well, I love to design and I love the annual national block drives. So I said, I want to go back and see if I can find 20 or more blocks, knowing this has only been in process for 10 years. So I had to find the blocks. I found some of the makers of the blocks and picked them out. So that was my dream, and I said, well, I want to use a panel. And I said, well, I want to put a panel in the center so I can get you focused just on the land of the free. And that was my dream. But then to make that reality, you know, you can say that, I have this idea in about 2 seconds, but to make the dream a reality sometimes takes a little bit longer. Not quite as long as 20 years, as Catherine Roberts had, but our reality was first I had to resize these. Some of them were 12.5 inches, so that was the resizing, and there's a lot of scraps over there from that. I had to lay out the patterns, and I use the electric quilter machine. I'm number 8, and that quilt computer design allowed me to lay this out, put my panel in, and sometimes you still have to wiggle these measurements when you get cut, so you never know for sure how the sashing is going to be and how it's going to change. So I changed the patterns out, I drew out a panel, I constructed blocks, put the blocks down on the floor at one of our quilt meetings, and all the gals said, well, I like these over here, and I like these over here, and I took pictures of them all, and when I got it home, I laid it out. My husband moved it once more, and this is the block layout. These are not like 2013, 2014. You'd have to have a little key which I'll make up to go with it of which years. But I do know that I joined Quilts of Valor with this block. This is my first block in 2018. So I constructed them. The next part then is the layering, the choosing the threads, choosing the patterns that I'm going to quilt it with. And this is very, a little bit of a mixture, because I free motioned the eagle, so that's kind of thread painted, and then the waves in there, and then outlined the blocks. But if you look close inside each block, you'll see a star. Some have a star within a star. And that's how we did with the quilting. And then when I was starting to get it together, doing the blocking and getting ready to wash it to make sure my red didn't bleed, I said, who am I going to give this to? Who can we award this to that would be someone that would be special? And that's where I started negotiating with Tammy. And we were able to, her finally yesterday, to say yes, that we would be able to award her a quilt. So what gets written in my journal, and my quilting journal, or just my thing, is that the issues that are confronted as the process is made, and my biggest issue is centering the panel, and then doing the math again and again, is this going to fit? And I have 3 sets of sashing cut, 2 sets will go in another quilt. They're different widths. The takeaway for me that I also wrote down is that I always love that my patience is getting better. I used to want to anticipate, which meant I didn't spend the time using my sewing skills, and so my corners didn't match, and all the corners match finally. And the teamwork with my group, not only in helping the layouts, but encouraging and saying, well, what did you do for this, or how did you figure this out? And we have a lot of us chat a lot around our sewing, so we have that. The joy, the pride, the anticipation of another award presentation, and what I want to say is now I am a part of Quilts of Valor history.
Hi, my name is Tammy Replogle, and I'm telling you my quilt story at the Quilts of Valor 20th Anniversary Conference in Paducah, Kentucky. Today is Friday, September 15th, 2023. I made this quilt for my brother, Denver Douglas Higley. He was in the Air Force for 4 years back in 1972 through about 76, 78. I'm not real sure on that. But he was in the Air Force. When he left the Air Force, he went right into the Air National Guard, where he was a civil servant in the Air National Guard for well over 25 years. He retired at age 65. He currently is in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, where he is very active in his church and as well as the military support groups in Michigan. I made this specifically because of the eagle, and if you notice, the Ohio stars are in the corners. That's because we were born and raised in Ohio, and it holds true meaning for us. The 3 stars in each corner symbolizes 3 bronze stars that our father received when he was in World War II. So I made this quilt so that it was very representative of our family. The northern geese or Canadian geese border was also, we would sit on the family farm and watch the geese migrate north and south, and that was an important thing for us. Like I say, the whole quilt is here as memories of our growing up in Ohio, as my true pride and honor to have a brother who cared so much that even at age 50, he went to Afghanistan and Iraq. His comment was, how can I send young men if I'm not willing to go? I couldn't be more proud of him, and for that, I'm giving him the Quilt of Valor. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Terry Johnson, and I'm telling my quilt story at the Quilts of Valor 20th Anniversary Conference in Paducah, Kentucky. Today is September 14th of 2023. Well, back in 2009, I met Mary Ann Fons in Winterset, Iowa in her shop. I was visiting there with my stepmother, Pat Howell, and Marianne told me about Under Our Wings, and she said, you ought to join Quilts of Valor and get involved. You're a very active quilter. And I said, well, not right now. I'm busy traveling and I have a young son, but I said, as soon as I retire, I'll get involved. Well, in 2016, I made this quilt for my dad, who had served in the Air Force during the Korean conflict. And even the label shows our picture as we traveled and visited the Korean memorial there in Washington, D.C., so it has a special label showing our picture there to honor him. But little did I know that when I awarded this quilt at the Quilt of Valor conference in Des Moines, Iowa, that he would only survive 11 months after that award. But I went home so touched by wrapping him in that quilt that I, not unlike Catherine Roberts, told all my quilting friends, we've got to do this. And so we went out to dinner one night, had tacos at the local Moose Lodge, and in walked the chief of police, who was a 35-year veteran and a command sergeant major. And he was getting ready to do a fundraiser for the Flags of Freedom on Interstate 80, exit 56. And I said, what beautiful way of honoring our veterans, but to give Quilts of Valor at that event to open the evening. Now, I was not involved with Quilts of Valor. I had to call Rita Pennington and say, can you help me make this happen? And sure enough, Rita brought the 6 quilts. We awarded 6 quilts that night. And thus, the next day, I joined Quilts of Valor and started Illinois Valley Quilts of Valor. We are 5 years old and celebrating our anniversary of 5 years. And we awarded about 600 quilts in those 5 years. So, it has touched my life. It has changed who I am as a quilter, and I hope you'll join us.
My name is Jacqueline McKinstry, and I'm telling my quilt story at the Quilts of Valor 20th Anniversary Conference in Paducah, Kentucky. Today is September 14th, 2023, and this is my 11th year in my journey with Quilts of Valor. They originally started when my friends were awarding wounded veterans at Fort Rucker with Quilts of Valor, and we got all excited and interested and started. And I needed something to do because my husband and my son were both deployed to Afghanistan at the same time. It was the 3rd combat tour for my son and the 5th for my husband in over 30 years. He went in 1982. They're both Apache pilots. And so it's been very stressful, and I needed something. So the Quilts of Valor filled the bill. I volunteered when a friend of mine retired just as a volunteer. And long story short, 2016, on 4th of July, I decided to take the state coordinator job for Alabama, and it has been delightful. We have awarded so many quilts, all the veteran stories. I've done my mom's best friend, who's a POW in the Hanoi Hilton. So I always have to call the other state coordinators and say, I'm coming to Wisconsin, I'm coming to Minnesota to award relatives and friends. That was amazing. One of the first Navy SEALs, I awarded him a quilt. And my favorite thing, I've been working on my uncle's quilt, trying to design it. And so this Christmas, I'm going to award my uncle, who was in Vietnam. He was in intelligence, and a lot of what he did he can't talk about, but he was a Bronze Star recipient, and he was just one of my heroes besides my mom's friend. And so I just finished his quilt. It's a mixture of 3 different quilt teachers, and I just got the idea. I've been drawing it for 3 years, and it's finally done, so I'm very excited. But this weekend, I've got a couple I'm awarding on Friday night, and the 15 veterans coming for the annual Wounded Warrior Hunt at Fort Novosel on Saturday. So I'm very excited to just keep going. Another 11 years.
Oh, those were wonderful. I just want to thank again, if any of these tellers are on the webinar today, thank them for participating. And I'd like to invite Lexie Millikan and Lauri Leirdahl to join me on camera now. They are Quilts of Valor representatives, and I'm so glad you could be with us today as we screen those. Sorry we missed a couple, but I thought it would be better to consolidate, and you all can all see this video on YouTube and you'll get a recording of this textile talk, but I really want to get a chance to talk to you both. And I'm going to just give a brief introduction to Lexie and Lauri so our audience knows a little bit about your background. Lexie Millikan, you're an artist, educator, and curator living in Western Kentucky, and you've done a lot with your art. You've also done a lot of leadership, had a lot of leadership roles as an executive director of arts organizations before now, and now you're the executive director of the Quilts of Valor Foundation. And you said in your bio, the mission of the Quilts of Valor Foundation hit close to home as your sister is a veteran who served in the Army National Guard and was deployed as part of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Her deployment affected the entire family, especially her infant son. This experience shaped Lexie's understanding of the sacrifices made not only by service members, but by the entire family as well. And I think you saw that in some of the videos that others have had that connection. And Lauri Leirdahl has been, you've been an attorney all your career in California and Washington, 28 years, and you say you're officially retired, but you're still doing volunteer work as an attorney. That's classic retired person, is doing more busier now than when they were working. And you say you have a long connection to military life. Your husband, a retired infantry CSM, served 32 years in the Army and deployed to Iraq 3 times. So you served as a military spouse. In addition to supporting your husband, you've worked with Chain of Command to facilitate communication with families, advised, mentors, and supported military families across the U.S. in readiness, morale, and crisis management. So boy, those things really help you be a leader with Quilts of Valor. And you're currently the president of the board of directors, and you say you're extremely thankful for the Quilts of Valor Foundation to provide you the opportunity to continue serving the veterans that you hold very dear to your heart. So both of you have a real passion for this work. And I wanted to, let me get this next slide up, because my first thing is I wanted to congratulate you both for representing the Quilts of Valor in receiving the Distinguished Service Award last month. This is a big deal, and you went to Washington, D.C. to receive it. Here's a photo of you receiving the award, and this is for significant contributions to the United States Army or the Association of the United States Army. So congratulations on that huge honor. And I want to then, skipped one. I want to start with you, Lauri, and I want to ask you to tell us a little bit about what makes a quilt of valor, and particularly about the label and the awarding.
Thank you, Amy. We are so thankful that you invited Lexie and I here today to share the Foundation's mission, and we appreciate our partnership with Quilt Alliance, and especially the Go Tell It, because as they heard from many of those stories, Quilts of Valors are unique in several different ways. One is the award ceremony, and the other is the requirement. The award ceremony is meaningful to the recipient as well as those of us who give the award ceremony, and then people who have watched the ceremony. And I encourage people, if they have not seen one, to please go to Quilts of Valor YouTube page, and they can see them. You can Google one and you can see them, and you'll understand what I meant. The Quilts of Valor award ceremonies the quilts are meant as an expression of gratitude. They're meant to thank and comfort the recipient. The quilts are awarded. They're not just handed out like blankets. They're not charity. They're not meant as a gift. They're not giving out as something as an award, as a blanket. They're meant as an award. They're a civilian award. They're meant to thank them for their selfless service, for leaving all that they hold dear, whether it was a time of peace or a time of crisis, and whether they served stateside or on foreign shores. They still left what they held dear to defend our country. And that is what the award ceremony is meant to express. And they're in all different venues. They can be in someone's home. They can be at an event venue like AUSA or VFW. They can be at a park. And they can be brief or they can follow a long script. But most of all, they're meant to comfort and thank the recipient. And I think you have a picture of one of the award certificates that we give out. And at a ceremony, we wrap the veteran in a quilt if we're able to, or we give them a handshake or a hug. But mainly it's to get that expression of gratitude and thankful for them. So the Quilt of Valor, I'm going to read my husband's because, he is a wonderful guy. And anyway, it says the Quilts of Valor Foundation wishes to recognize you for your service to our nation. We consider it our privilege to do so. Though we may never know the extent of your sacrifice to protect and defend the United States of America, we award you this Quilt of Valor as an expression of gratitude from a grateful nation. And the Quilt of Valor mission is to cover veterans and service members who have been touched by war and provide them with a healing and comforting Quilt of Valor. What makes the Quilt of Valor also unique is our requirements. There's other patriotic quilts out there, and God bless them. We appreciate all the patriotic quilts out there and thanking the veterans for their service. But to be a Quilt of Valor, you're looking at a requirement. They're normally 60 by 80, but we understand that not all patterns come out that way. And so it can be 55 to 65. 70 to 90 is probably about the largest that you want to be. We kind of discourage lap quilts because we mainly want to be able to wrap the veteran in that quilt. They have to be machine quilted. They can't be tied. It has to be specific. And the label is what actually the most important is. The label, and you can see what my local group does with the Quilt of Valor label, has our Stars and Stripes name on it, but it can be the group Stars and Stripes. It can be whatever their group is. It just can't have a political message or a religious message. But what's important to me in the label is it tells a story. It tells that who pieced the label, who pieced the quilt. It talks about who long-armed it, who brought those three, the batting, the top, and the backing together. It tells the date and the time that it was awarded. But most importantly, we put the recipient's name on that, and we tell them that it's now part of their story. And if they need the warmth of comfort of a quilt, that to please wrap this quilt around them because it's a tangible reminder that there are thousands of people who are forever in their debt. And so I'm just giving you a quick recap of actually what the award ceremony and the label is. I encourage you to look at Quilts of Valor, the website, or reach out to Lexie or myself if you need more information about the award process or the quilting label.
That's so special. The way that you have it it's very specific what each person needs to do. So that's a very consistent, the way that you carry out your mission is very consistent. And I love seeing all the photographs of the awards too, when the quilts are awarded. And we've captured some of the stories of the makers of the quilts. But I'm interested too, Lexi, if you could tell us about some stories that maybe recipients have shared with you.
Sure, I'd love to. And I just want to reiterate what Lauri said. Amy, thank you so much for inviting us to be here. We're so glad to participate in this textile talk. We're honored to be a part of this. We appreciate how you all have worked with us to gather some of those important stories. So as you can imagine, our award ceremonies bring up a lot of emotions for both the quilt makers and the veterans and service members and their family members that are involved. And we get to see those emotions firsthand. And then we also get to hear from those people after the fact through messages that they send directly to our office or by email. And so I just want to share a couple of those messages that we have gotten about the impact of their Quilt of Valor. So if you will allow me to just read a couple here for you. It is with sincere appreciation that we send Quilts of Valor Foundation our gratitude. Thank you. Recently, my husband was awarded with a magnificent handmade quilt made by Deb S. The explanation of the beginnings of the quilt QOV concept was touching, and the presentation ceremony so very special. When Deb told my husband, "Welcome home," I had a lump in my throat. Robert was recently diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, maybe a result of exposure to nuclear waste when in the Navy. He is always cold due to chemo, so his QOV quilt is perfect. Thank you. And then I have a message from a younger veteran. I was in the hospital when I received my quilt. I was aware of where I was and why I was there. I just wanted to be left alone, but everyone was coming into my room. The mayor came in, a senator came in, and I just wanted to be left alone. But when you ladies came in, it was like grandma was coming in, and I felt safe. And then I have uh, a message from a Vietnam veteran that I would also like to read. It was a powerful moment for me to receive your quilt. The act of having it placed on my shoulders and wrapped around me was especially poignant. I had a premonition the days before the ceremony that this was going to be something extraordinary. I literally felt a release of numerous long ago, nearly forgotten emotional hurts and disappointments shed away as the quilt slipped over my shoulders. It is one of the more puzzling paradoxes of military service that we veterans celebrate our service with fellow veterans, wear our military ball caps, thrill to hear our service song, display our command plaques and awards, and most proudly salute our national anthem every time it is played in our presence, all the while carrying around unfinished business such as memories of the old slights of busy shipmates or buddies, the perceived injustices of long ago almost forgotten supervisors, and the largely forgotten felt betrayal from segments of our country's citizenry decades ago. This was particularly true for us Vietnam veterans, but I guess it is true for many other more contemporary servicemen and women as well. Life in the military, and especially during war, comes at you faster than you can take it in and process it, even if it does not rise, as in my case, to the level of PTSD. These loose ends just rattle around in one's mind, camouflaged as unimportant little things, until you feel the love of someone reach out to you and wrap you in an exquisite quilt and give you a hug. That is when you realize that you just received something you didn't know you needed until you actually got it. Well done. God bless you for your hard work. I will tell of your good work for the rest of my life. So it's messages like these that are so impactful to us as an organization, and what our members do across the country really makes a difference for these veterans and service members.
Oh, thank you so much for reading that. That just brings so many points to light about the difference in generations of our veterans. What one group maybe experienced, another group didn't, or, the variety of experiences. And I think it's so interesting too to see the quilts that are made to be awarded are also very different. And I think the makers, you can see, like Don Dixon was talking about, thinking really hard about the fabrics he used, and maybe not every veteran is wanting to have the red, white, and blue colors, and he was looking for a specific type of aircraft that this person might have flown. I just thought that was so sensitive and unique, and really shows how creative these quilts are. These are not just block pattern, charity. No disrespect to charity quilts at all, but sometimes those charity quilt projects are designed to be really quickly made so that they can generate a bunch of them. And as you, Laurie, pointed out, this is an award. It is a carefully crafted, specific award object. So I'm so glad to have you read those. It's so touching, and really fuels the mission, right? I'm sure that, that is such a nice conversation between the recipients and the makers, and hearing from them, getting that. I'm sure there's some you don't hear from because of the nature of their emotional impact of receiving the quilt. That's probably a very, emotional thing. Is there anything you want to say, either of you, about to our audience about who may want to get involved? Should they look for a local group? Should they contact you directly? How do people get involved?
Yeah, there are multiple ways to get involved. We have about 11,000 members all across the country that make up about 700 groups, and we have groups in every single state. So you can visit our website and you can find a group that's close to you, and you could join them for a sew day. You can become a member, you can be an individual member. So there's lots of different ways that you could get involved and participate.
That is fantastic. The the conference that I attended last year, I was just flabbergasted by the amount of quilts. I think at that point it was, what's the number now that have been awarded? I think we saw it on the slide, 450,
We're over 400,000.
400,900.
4. 400,900. Amazing, amazing work that you're both doing. Thank you so much for uh, working with us on this project. And I hope that, if some of the group members want to continue doing this, documenting, we would be glad to help. We'd love to see that continue. This is part of an overall effort to fill in this project and our documentation collections with specific groups who are doing work that is, specific to their mission, and we're delighted to be able to work with you on it. Thank you so much. And let's put in the chat all the web links for Quilts of Valor. So if you're interested, go ahead and look for those. I'm going to share my screen one more time without sound. Thank you for bearing with us, everyone. I'm going to maybe edit the recording that we share so you don't have to go through the wait. We'll just put the full video. But next week, I want to mention we're doing another textile talk next week. The Quilt Alliance is on deck next week, and we're going to do documenting your group and community as a follow-up to this presentation. It's a how-to guide, so you can, like we worked with Quilts of Valor, your group can do something similar. That could be your guild, your artist group, your church group, your community group, your library, whatever. Maybe your local Quilts of Valor would like to do something like this. But we're going to give you the how-to guide to do it yourself, or how you can work with us to do these videos. They really are very simple to do. And I hope that we'll see you next week. Don't forget that the Textile Talk has a group of generous sponsors, industry partners who sponsor our work, but you can make a donation as well. Lucy, if you would go ahead and put that, if you have that link, there we go. It's already in there. She's way ahead of me. If you like what you saw and you'd like to make a donation to this series, we would appreciate it. But thank you all for being here. Thank you, Lexie and Lauri. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.